West of the Rockies, you're on the air.
Y2K. How can we repair?
A few of their machines and radios, throw them into darkness for a few hours.
Fighting for our lives, family must survive. 5 years. Down, air filtration, water filtration.
Coming at you from the frozen tundra that is East Central Alberta, Canada, streaming live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, Rumble, and Odyssey. Welcome back to the workshop where we create community, find freedom, promote preparedness, and share success. I am Toolman Tim. Today is March the 14th, 2024. This is episode... I was going to tell you it was 414, but I am way off. I believe we are 434. Not really sure where I got 414. So it's great to see all my fellow delinquents in here. Happy Pi Day. It is 3/14 once again. So I hope everyone's doing well. We have had an unseasonably warm kind of stretch here in Alberta for us anyhow, and I am enjoying it. So let's open up this evening with a rule to live by. And that rule for me is rule number 7. And this is probably one of my favorites. It is definitely one that I originated. So rule number 7, if you keep beating a dead horse, all you're going to get is a bigger mess. Now, what does that mean? Well, it's pretty straightforward, but if you've ever heard what do they say? The definition of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting different results. Well, again, if you stand in the same place, you keep doing what you're doing, you don't make any changes at all, there's no way you're going to find any improvement. The only thing you're going to do is dig yourself in a bigger hole. It's another way of saying, if you find yourself in a hole, the easiest way to get out is to first stop digging. So if you keep beating a dead horse, all you get is a bigger mess. And I'm sure somebody out there will be like, Tim, don't talk about dead horses. Well, it's a metaphor, I think, or a simile, whatever it is. So there you go. All right. So we are going to drop into
nothing like eating under an open sky, even if it is radioactive.
Dropping the dime precious metals. So this will be the precious metals report. And we are going to start with one of my favorite places to shop, or maybe I should say one of my wife's favorite places to shop, and that happens to be Costco. So this week's Dropping the Dime is an article from the Toronto Star. And if you're not sure where Toronto is, that's okay. It's easy to miss. It's just a tiny little city. But maybe 3-4 months ago, I did a segment on Costco adding gold coins and gold bars that they were selling at online. Mainly, they would do them in store as well. Well, most recently, they have now gotten into the silver game. Becky and I picked a few up just to make sure that the shipping process would be nice. Make sure the price was what we expected it to be. And, it turned out pretty good. So let me share with you. It says, forget Costco chicken. You can now buy Canadian silver coins at the warehouse giant. And some of the silver and gold collectors that I follow on YouTube, their preference is for the Canadian maple, mainly because of some of the newer features they put into it that make it even more difficult to forge. But there you go. For the equivalent of nearly 630 Costco hot dogs, why not dish out some money for some silver coins? Cashing in on the rampant popularity of its gold bars, Costco is now selling silver bars, silver coins as well, and Canadian ones at that. Not just Canadian though, folks. They're also selling them in the States, and they're selling silver eagles down there. So it's, not bad. And their price, I'm going to give you a breakdown of their price because their gold price wasn't super great, but the silver price I was pretty happy with. Said the discount retail giant couldn't stock its gold bars on its shelves fast enough when there was a rush to grab its 24-karat Swiss gold bars, forcing Costco to limit their sales to 2 bars. They're limiting their sales to, I believe it's 5 sleeves, so 5 tubes of 25 per week or something like that. They said when they load them on their site, they're gone within minutes. Gold and Costco's recent turn to silver have led the company's e-commerce growth. 10 million members across the country and did $25 billion in sales. So the real question is, do you have a membership or not? Anybody out there? If you're in the comments and you want to throw it out, obviously we do. we have the executive membership because it pays for itself. We buy a significant amount of stuff from Costco for the daycare. And so we get, I don't remember, 2% or whatever it is at the end of the year back. So this is a way to get not just a really good price on silver, but also, and I just realized this because I wasn't thinking about it when I ordered silver, it's also a way to get a rebate back on your silver, which is almost non-existent in this day and age. So here's the price, $900. Okay. Just remember, this is in those fake Canadian dollars. I will convert at the end here, but $969 for a tube of 25. That works out to $38.80 a piece, shipping included. So shipping's free with this, which is nice. Now, the other big place in Canada that sells is silvergoldbull.ca. $38.21 a piece for random year. So the tube you get from Costco, all brand new 2023s. Silver Gold Bull, if you want to get 2023s right now, it's $5 more. Sorry, $4.50 more than what you'd pay at Costco. So that gives you an idea. So Costco's price overall is very competitive. And again, if you have the executive membership, you're going to get, I think it's 2% back off all your purchases. And if you're wondering, that $969.99 for a tube of 25 in Canuck dollars works out to $28.66 in Freedom units. Good old United States greenbacks. So overall, I think that is a damn good price. So if you're looking for a place to get some gold or some silver and to get a bit of a rebate back on it, nothing wrong with that whatsoever. Thought I'd share it with you folks. And if you didn't catch it, gold hit an all-time high. I believe it was in the last 7 days. And now silver has not followed suit. So if you're looking, this is not advice, but now or a week ago is a great time to buy silver. Keep an eye on the price because I have my suspicions it's going to go up. I'm no expert. It's just, it doesn't seem to me like gold can go up that high for that long without silver coming behind it. So there you go. Let's take a look and see who we have from fellow delinquents in the audience, the community this evening. And Chris Dixon, great to see you. Says, buy all the silver. Evening, folks. Martinson family says, we don't want Toronto either. Please trade for silver. Oh, yeah. Might even trade it for beans, bullets, and Band-Aids for that matter. Got Byron Roberts, Beth Emily, Digger. Good to see y'all. And Martinson family was the first one in here in the comments this evening. All right. So what do we have next? Well, let's just slide on into...
If anyone dies while you are kept in your fallout room, move the body to another room in the house.
The time has come. Stranger than fiction. I realized I should ask everyone out there, no echoes this evening because I didn't change anything. And Sunday evening, we had no echoes. So I don't know. Here we are. And before we pop on a little further, Rachel said, the rebate is an angle I hadn't thought of, but I think the local shop can usually do better in small amounts, though. Perfect. And Chris Dixon says the echo's growing on me. So does that mean we just had an echo? Because I cannot figure out, and I don't know why only the Thursday show is echoing, but the Sunday show is not. So I don't know. Anyway, Lone Canadian, silver estimated to be mined out by the end of 2025, at least the profitable. Isn't that interesting? Yep. Paul Conrad, good to have you guys. Anyway, well, I'm going to still play the transitions. They're going to be an echo on them until we can figure it out. I like the transitions. We'll work on it. So good to see y'all. All right. Stranger than fiction. So this week we got 4 stories we're going to cover. This very first one was one that was sent to me. It was posted in Telegram twice, sent to me once. It seemed to be something everybody was quite interested in. So let's take a look. Anybody got a spare $1.1 million American kicking around? Because built by preppers for preppers. See this Wisconsin compound built for off-grid lifestyles. This comes from the USA Today, so take it with a grain of salt. No, anyway. So we've got this incredible compound that was built just pre-Y2K. So for any of those out there who, probably shouldn't go get scheduled for a prostate exam, Y2K was a bug. Well, that's on the male side anyway, a bug in software that ended up, for the most part, getting fixed. It's not just a fashion style or an aesthetic like the Gen Zs like to talk about. So this stone triplex or triplex is home on 80 acres. It's a beautiful plot. in South Range, Wisconsin. Wisconsin. And it was built by preppers for preppers and is now for sale at $1.1 million, according to Remax results. And Chris Dixon says that's like $11 billion. Ain't that the truth? The compound seller, Jonathan Allen, said in an interview that he was told when he bought it, the families who built it were prepping for Y2K. And he praised the resourcefulness. Now, it's pretty cool. So if you can see this picture, I'm going to describe it for those on the audio for sure. But we have what looks like, honestly, what this reminded me of, and most of you probably haven't seen this, but where I grew up in Nova Scotia, there was a former English fort on the top of the hill in Halifax Harbor called Citadel. And in there, they had they were basically trenches that the enemy would have to go through, and both sides were lined with stone walls. And they could fire a musket in there, and it could ricochet off the wall, the lady said, up to 7 times and still be deadly. So these look like the underground house was kind of designed with that in mind. It's got bridges. It's made with concrete, made with stone. It's at the end of a dead-end road. All of those things that just get the old hairs on the back of the prepper neck standing up, I got to tell you. So what an interesting place. Like I said, if you got an extra 1.1 million, designed to be easily defended for sure, and built like a literal brick shithouse. It's got 2 wells on the compound, room for an more than one outbuilding, but all kinds of different things. It said if people were around or old enough to remember the fear of Y2K, I think the families were just strategic and smart. I want to be cautious and say they were preppers, but they were also just self-sufficient. Again, the whole idea of being a prepper is really just being a little more self-sufficient. The house itself is beautiful. It looks like something, I don't know, it has kind of a 70s aesthetic to it, kind of that low bungalow. I think that's what it's called, a bungalow ranch style house, I believe is what it is. Looks like it would have fit in really well, other than the fact that it's stone design as a setting for an 80s sitcom, but just a nice overall looking house. It's got graduated walls, stone walls everywhere. It does look like a British or a French fort. It says, Alan said the property has 2 wells, room for a machine shop, a separate building that used to house a diesel generator, the roof of the south-facing building covered in grass, which helps with insulation and camouflage. Interesting. So overall, just a beautiful property set on a dead-end road with vantage points, a shooting range, gardens, apple trees, and plenty of lumber. Alan says it would be well suited for someone who wants to be prepared to go off the grid. This is way cooler than some of those decommissioned missile silos. I mean, those would be all right too, but this you'd be able to, I don't know if you'd want to rent it out, but it's got room enough, 3 separate living facilities all attached together. So it'd be great for an extended family, a nice bug out location. And like I said, what's $1.1 million American between friends? It's just chump change, right? But overall, just a beautiful house. Looks like, yeah, there you go. And there's a plot for those who can see it. 80 acres in the middle of a fairly, well, I would say medium dense forest with some grassland in the middle, and just a beautiful property overall. It says the listing for 5312 Stone Road with vantage points seeing toward Duluth, Minnesota, and Lake Superior. So anyway, I couldn't go by without sharing this story this week because everybody seemed to be a bit interested in it. And again, I don't know why. I've always had a thing for Y2K. This would be a just perfect bug out location if a person wanted to live in Wisconsin. I went through there one evening many, many years ago. Stayed at the hotel, a hotel, cheap one in Madison, Wisconsin. So a little young fella, maybe 16, 17, working behind the counter, handed him my license, and he said, Nova Scotia? Where in the world is Nova Scotia? I didn't even know Nova Scotia was a real place. So there you go. All right, what do we got next for you, folks? We have, well, this one I'm a week late on talking about this, but the concept or the topic of daylight savings time has been a constant refrain in the Telegram group this week. And I learned something. I was wrong. So no, it's important to say on occasion. So here you go. When daylight savings time messes with your brain. So everybody has heard the old fact that when the clocks change, it's unhealthy. Accidents go up, heart attacks go up, stress, murders. No, I don't know about murders. I'm just making that part up. But overall, it's just shitty when the time changes. We all want to go along with it. We all want to do away with it, I think. Anyway, it seems to be in our group. Most people are like, you know what? It's pretty stupid. So I assumed that daylight savings time would always be better. I was kind of anti-standard time because, again, who doesn't want an extra hour of daylight at the end of the day? Well, Brian Alexovich sent this article over, or he made me aware of it anyhow. It turns out that the springing forward in the spring is actually way worse for your health than the falling back. And it's not just short term. So it's not one of those things that if we switch and, within a week or two, it'll mellow out and everything will be good. There are long-term health effects that I had no idea about. Let's dig into it, guys. And again, we've heard it, the old meme that gets shared every time, but only the government would cut a foot off the top of a blanket, sew it onto the bottom until you have a bigger blanket. They do that with taxes too, don't they? They love to tell us how you're getting this much back. And no, what you really did was you stole $1,000 and you're giving me back $17. So you should be happy. Don't forget about that. So it opens up here. I like this is a World War I era poster extolling the value of daylight savings time, which may actually do more harm than good. All right. And before I go on, Mitch says the property is listed at 1.1 now, if anyone is looking for a steal. Yes, it is. All right. So as people in the US, this article was written a week ago, prepare to set their clocks ahead 1 hour, I find myself bracing for the annual ritual of media stories about this disruption to daily routines caused by switching from standard to daylight. Yeah, I get it. I always knew that. And so this comes from Atlas Obscura. Tends to be one of the sites. They have great articles, just really interesting, thought-provoking stuff. But the effects go beyond simple inconvenience. Researchers are discovering that springing ahead each March is connected with serious negative health effects, including an uptick in heart attacks and teen sleep deprivation. So here's the deal, guys. This is what I ended up at. I ended up reading the article just this far, and I thought, well, it makes sense. Let's just do away with it, and we will go with daylight savings time, and we'll all be happy, because I've always been told that there's always nasty short-term health effects during the time change. But hang on, this dude's an expert, and he doesn't just play one on TV. I've studied the pros and the cons of these twice annual rituals for more than 5 years as a professor of neurology at Vanderbilt University Medical Center Sleep Division. So the dude knows what he's talking about. In other words, it's become clear to me and many of my colleagues that the transition to daylight savings time affects health immediately after the clock change. And, you ready for this? For the nearly 8 months that Americans remain on daylight savings time. So I thought, well, this is weird. Okay, let's dig in a little bit. Standard time most closely approximates natural light. And that's something we talk about in our prepping communities a lot is, especially when you live up north where it gets dark for a long time, the absence of vitamin D, the absence of daylight can harm you. But also too much daylight at the wrong time is not a good thing either. So here you go. Standard time most closely approximates natural light, with the sun directly overhead at or near noon. In contrast, during daylight savings time from March until November, the clock change causes natural light to be present 1 hour later, we know this, in the evening according to clock time. So why is that a big deal? So here it is. The biggest advantage of daylight savings time is that it provides an extra hour of light late into the evening, depending on time of year for sports and that kind of stuff. However, here's the big however. Exposure to the light later in the evening for almost 8 months during daylight savings comes at a price. The extended evening light delays the brain's release of melatonin. So if you're into, the blue light blockers and, trying to limit your screen time at the end of the day, you might not even realize that daylight savings time is doing you a huge disservice before you even start. This extended evening light delays the brain's release of melatonin, the hormone that promotes drowsiness, which in turn interferes with sleep and causes us to sleep less overall. Makes sense? Geography can also make a difference. So like I mentioned, when you live up here closer to Santa Claus than most folks, you're going to get some really short days and some really long days. But one study showed, check this out, that people living on the western edge of the time zone who get light later in the morning and later in the evening get less sleep than their counterparts on the eastern edge of the time zone. Did not know that. They said the study found that the western edge residents had higher rates of obesity, diabetes, heart disease, breast cancer, And they said these health problems may result from chronic sleep deprivation and circadian misalignment. So in other words, daylight savings time does not line up as perfect with kind of our human inclination for waking up and going to sleep with the sun. It kind of screws things up enough that it makes you wonky for the rest of the 8 months. Didn't know it. I don't know. I probably still think that a person would get used to it. I agree. Beth Emily says, I'm a morning person and do not like daylight savings time. It is, what it is. So I guess a few things to look at. And I thought about this, no matter what time change it is, plan ahead just a little bit to get a little extra sleep. That's what Becky and I always try to do, but we're never that great at it. That's the problem. We end up running into troubles. We're like, we'll go to bed. And we never want to. I seem to struggle with this one, the springing ahead worse than the falling back. But remember, give yourself some patience. It takes a few days to acclimatize to the time change, which is true. And maybe don't plan complicated kind of stuff on the Sunday after time change, because that's when you're going to end up hurting yourself. Or I don't know if you can see, took a big chunk out of my finger because once again, didn't wear gloves, just stupid things like that, right? But honestly, here's what I would say, something I never thought of before, and it's probably not going to change the way I live per se, but if you're overly sensitive to sleep issues, maybe keep an eye on your sunlight exposure late in the day, because again, it might mess you up. And here in Alberta, especially, we are one of those where we have to put room darkening blinds and shades and that sort of thing in our bedrooms, because there's lots of times that it's after 11 o'clock before the sun goes down. And welcome to the party this evening. Hardway Homestead, Alaska says, party all the time here in Alaska in the summer. Yeah, every time I think I have it bad, I just got to look a little further north, don't I? So just something to think about, guys. I am totally down with eliminating it one way or the other. Just stick with it so we don't have to deal with this damn thing all the time. Chris Dixon says, remember Alberta's vote on daylight savings time? The choices were keep it or move to full-time spring ahead. Zero mention of standard time. Yeah, I wondered about that. I don't know where that came from. I wonder, now that we think about it, I wonder if they'd have chose or if they'd have put that on the plebiscite and said, because I think the biggest problem was the farmers. They like doing their chores in the morning, and rightfully so. And they didn't want to lose that extra hour of daylight in the morning. So I wonder if they'd have went to standard time. And for those who don't know, my opinion on the entire thing is over the next, I would say within 10 years, we're going to do away with time changes altogether. You've got, if I remember the reading I did, I think it was 19 states and a bunch of provinces right at the moment who are, they have legislation passed. So in the US, you can stay on standard time. I believe that's the right rule. You can stay on standard time without needing approval from Congress. But to go to daylight all year round, you need approval from Congress. Okay. But what you've got right now is a whole bunch of states that say, if all our bordering states pass the laws, we're going to pass it as well. So you get this great old-fashioned Mexican standoff with time zones for everybody waiting for someone to flinch. And as soon as somebody flinches like that, everybody's going to change, because it's going to be one of those things. So yes, let's go back. Standard daylight doesn't matter to me, but I'm kind of leaning towards standard at this point. And we're going to shout out to Clark Deacon. I was going to talk about him a little bit later, but he was traveling through and was nice enough as a fellow delinquent to stop by and visit me at home here today. So I always love it when folks give me the heads up and say, hey, I'm going to be in town. Do you want to get together? And the answer is going to be invariably yes, because that's what I like to do. So it was good to see you today, Clark. And I hope I don't know if you're home yet or if you're still driving, but either way, enjoy the show this evening. All right, what do we got next for you, folks? Anybody see the crisis in Haiti? Because it's absolutely insane, and I don't know how I missed this. This is as close to a modern-day collapse as we've seen in a few years, that's for sure. Now, there is some seriously messed up stuff that's going on over there, but there hasn't been enough verification on some of the things I've read about. So if I mention anything in here, I will make sure that I talk about the fact that it hasn't been completely confirmed yet. But here you go. Second word, a cannibal gang and its barbecue leader push Haiti into chaos. This is from indiatoday.in. And so they've been in trouble over there for quite some time. We're going to talk about that a little bit now. They're in a worse way than, you remember the show I did on South Africa and their worsening energy crisis over there? Well, this is significantly worse because there's just no money around whatsoever. So here we go. Haiti has descended into chaos. Its prime minister has resigned. A gang leader named Jimmy Chiziri, who projects himself as a revolutionary, has become the most powerful person in Haiti. He is known as Barbecue for burning people alive, in case you're wondering. There's worse stories about him out there, but most are unverified reports at the moment. So Haiti, a Caribbean country, has plunged into chaos due to gang warfare. The U.S. has airlifted non-essential staff from its embassy in country, has declared a state of emergency. The prime minister is stranded outside the country, and he resigned. This comes, get this, if you thought that was bad enough, this comes after gangs attacked the airports, their police stations, their prisons, and thousands of inmates have gotten out of jail and fled as well. This Jimmy, popularized as Baby Q or Barbecue, is the leader of the notorious G9 and Family Gang and is now the most powerful man in Haiti. So you've got political turmoil. You have a completely broke and collapsed government. You have a former police officer turned gang member, gang leader, who is running the country, and you have no help anywhere. It is a mess. The latest round of chaos, led by Barbecue, is an attempt to overthrow Prime Minister Ariel Henry. After he left for a summit last week, he had gone to Kenya to secure the leadership of a UN-backed international security mission. But when he tried to fly back, he couldn't land because of gunshots all over the place. Go figure. So here you are. Reacting to the video, again, I don't know how I missed this. El Salvador president said the similar visuals were seen in his country as well, as the gangs in Haiti needed to be eradicated. So I'm not going to try to pronounce this guy's name because whatever I do will be a huge disservice to him. But he said we saw similar images in El Salvador a few years ago. Gangs bathing with the skulls of their victims. All the experts said they couldn't be defeated because they were an intrinsic part. Can you imagine an intrinsic part of our society? Could you imagine saying, well, you know, people bathing with the skulls of other people, it's just intrinsically involved in our society, so we can't get rid of it. They were wrong. We obliterated them. The same must be done in Haiti. So I didn't even know about the violence in El Salvador. I looked it up, and in 2020, 2021, they started cracking down on the gang violence. They brought in 10,000 military soldiers, surrounded the city where the gangs were holed up, and basically eradicated them. And something like 98% of the country was happy with the results. So that would suck being in the middle of that. So who wants to know a little bit about Mr. Barbecue? Because I did. Jimmy Sherzier, or however you pronounce it, popular as Barbecue, is a 47-year-old rifle-toting former police officer. He was sacked from Haiti's police force in 2018 because of his role in the slum murders and assaults. Shazier was removed from the police force for his alleged ties to a number of horrific crimes, including the slaughter in the La Saline slums where 71 people were killed, 7 women were raped, and 400 homes were burned down, the New York Post reported. Whew. He's a scary kind of dude. So here you go. It is, so what happened in Haiti? How did it get so bad? Because it seemed like I hadn't heard anything about it until all of a sudden the entire country was in collapse. I believe I actually read about it on Reddit for the first time. Read it on Reddit. And somebody said, Haiti is in full collapse mode. Didn't know about it. So I thought, if I didn't know about it, lots of other folks hadn't heard about it. And just like the South African power crisis, I thought, you know, we can't do much over here, but at least we can perhaps be informed so that we can keep an eye out for the signs here, hopefully that it never happens. But so I actually was going to go with a different article tonight. And after I read it a couple times, it didn't sit well with me. So for the record, the article was very staunchly talking about the supposed cannibalism in Haiti at the moment. And that's scary as shit. But the problem is that I thought, I better check the sources on that article. And there's really only one or two sources that haven't been confirmed. So we're going to slide back on that. But the fact that the gangs are burning people alive and they've taken over the country should let you know that there's problems there. Like I said, this is the closest we've seen to a full collapse in, you can't really call it a modern society because unfortunately Haiti's been a mess for a long time. But where did it start? You guys remember the 2010 Haitian earthquake? They've never really recovered from that. So we're talking 14 years ago, but it was a country. And if you didn't know, Haiti and the Dominican Republic actually share an island. The Dominican Republic does quite well for itself. Haiti is the opposite of that, unfortunately. And so 2010, they have an earthquake. They have no money. They really can't resolve anything. And over the next decade, the entire country gets more and more and more pissed off with their government, to the point of 2019, the main prime minister, the guy who runs the country, is like, well, surprise, I'm going to suspend elections. So I'm going to be an indefinite leader for the country. Again, I didn't really hear anything about this. Maybe I'm just not looking at the right area. So in 2021, they're like, surprise, assassination. Somebody killed him. Nobody knows who did it, but somebody did. In the meantime, he had just appointed kind of a backup or an assistant prime minister at the time. That person took over. And again, no elections, no nothing. Just, we're going to run this country. And that's all there is to it. People were not happy with that whatsoever. Here's the deal. Haiti has no money. They have no military, which means all they really have is a small police force, which is woefully unprepared to handle roving gangs in the thousands. They're hooped at the moment. So without outside interference or intervention, I'm not sure exactly what's going to happen, but it's a mess and it would be scary. I couldn't imagine living on an island nation like that and dealing with it. I'm just not sure. I don't know. And I guess we'll see where things end up. I certainly hope that they do better over there. And I hope that, anyway, I don't know what the solution is, to be honest, because I know we all have our own problems and it would be nice to deal with our own homegrown problems first. But just an interesting window. I'll kind of keep an eye on this story and we'll maybe revisit it if there's any severe changes. Let's take a look at the community comments. Clark Deacon said, I set the YouTube notification to tell me when the live stream starts, and it still manages to not tell me. I don't get it. I can't win. Barbecue. Clark Deacon also says this barbecue character sounds like somebody from Idiocracy. Lone Canadian says, large voodoo culture in the country. It's been a mess for longer than that. Go back to the days of Papa Doc Duvalier, and that was 40 years ago. Yeah, it's been a mess. Back even into I believe they were ruled by the French. If I'm incorrect, somebody please correct me. And things have just never really gotten good there. But Hardway Homestead, Alaska said, didn't the Clintons help Haiti? Absolutely. And we have somebody in here that I do not know. Ego Happen says, hey man, can you tell me the game name? I'm not sure what you're referring to, but if it's a serious comment, follow up with something else. And if it's not, don't worry about it. All right. Final story of the evening for Stranger Than Fiction, which is one of my favorites for sure. This is kind of a fun one. And this is a reflection of Self Reliance Festival that's coming up, which I think is kind of cool. This is from Reuters or Reuters, however you want to pronounce it, depending on if you're from the East Coast or the West Coast. U.S. prepper culture diversifies amid fear of disaster and political unrest. So we're going to talk about it a little bit later on, but I ran a survey this week and I asked people, how many people do you think in the United States self-identify as preppers? And it turns out there's 20 million people. So what's that, like 5% of the American population self-identifies as prepper? Now, not everybody's going to be prepared, but at least people are open to the idea of it. U.S. prepper culture diversifies. Here we go. This is from Colorado, March 9th. Brooke Morgan surveyed booths at the Survival and Prepper Show in Colorado. They were stocked with boxes of ammunition, mounds of trauma kits, and every type of knife imaginable. Self-described 30-year-old lesbian from Indiana, Morgan is one of a new breed of Americans getting ready to survive political upheaval, and natural catastrophes, a pursuit that until recently was largely associated with far-right movements such as white nationalists since the 1980s. Now, I could probably argue with that point slightly, but they're not offhand there. I mean, for the most, the survivalist movement definitely had a militia bent to it in the 80s, and into the 90s, and then into the 2000s with the Doomsday Preppers. Yes, it absolutely was more of a right-wing movement than the left. But if you go back further to the Back to the Land movement or to the Retreaters movement, there was a very large left-wing proponent or a portion in there of folks who were like, hey, we also realize the world's going to hell in a handbasket. What can we do to be more self-reliant and prepared? That's what I like about it. So again, I probably haven't talked about it nearly enough as I should, but I am 100% an anarcho-capitalist. And that means that, and lots of people are going to hate me for this, but you've got just as much a right to a gun as you do an abortion. And I know folks are going to disagree with me, but here it is. It is what it is, and I'm going to stand by the fact that we just need to agree on the important things, and the rest we can disagree on. So here we are. Self-described 30-year-old lesbian, one of a new breed of American preppers. Researchers say the number of preppers has doubled in size, about 20 million since 2017. Imagine that. Much of that growth is from minorities and people considered left of center politically, whose sense of insecurity was heightened. You ready about this? By Donald Trump's 2016 election. Okay. So political upheaval made people nervous. Check. You don't have to be from the left or the right to be nervous about political upheaval. COVID-19 pandemic. Check. Guess what? Right, left, doesn't matter. Folks were nervous about it. The effects of it, whether you agree on the cause or the symptoms or the cure, doesn't matter. The fact that it happens means it's something we need to look at. How about more frequent extreme weather? Yep. Also something that both sides of the dichotomy prep for, extreme weather. Now, where you come out on the cause of it, that sort of thing, doesn't really matter, because again, the important thing is folks are looking to be more prepared than when they came in. And the 2020 racial justice protests following the murder of George Floyd. Once again, mass protests, something that lots of folks, as a matter of fact, last week, I do believe I had a survey and people said, if we deal with any one bad situation in 2024, political upheaval and mass protests would be it. So there you go. So these are folks from both sides of the aisle. Doesn't really matter. Coming at prepping from different vantage points, but looking for the same results. And I absolutely love it. Here we come. You ready? All right. Morgan grew up, this is the 30-year-old Idahoan lesbian. She grew up in a prepper family, still considers herself self-reliant and ready to handle a disaster. Sounds like my type of person. She left the prepper world of her youth behind in part to escape the conservatism associated with the movement. That's fair. The diversification of prepping was clear last weekend at the Survival and Prepper Show at the fairgrounds. A liberal district, get this, a liberal district which Joe Biden won in 2020 by nearly 57 percentage points over Trump. 2,700 people paid $10 a piece, and the attendees were varied. I like that. Bearded white men with Okay, back up. There are going to be some things in this article that we won't necessarily agree on, but I'm going to share them anyway. Bearded white men with closely cropped hair and heavily tattooed arms were there. But so were the hippie moms carrying babies in rainbow-colored slings and chatting about canning methods, Latino families looking over greenhouses and water filtration systems, and members of the local Mountain View Fire Rescue Team who in 2021 battled a devastating fire in the region, gave CPR demonstrations, and encouraged citizens to be more prepared. How cool is that? Attendees and those running the booths said the show reflected the concerns of millions of Americans who no longer feel. This is the thrust of this article here, guys. Millions of Americans, and I'm going to expand that to North Americans because I know hundreds of thousands of Canadians hopefully feel this way, that they can no longer count on the government, that they no longer can always count on the government or private industry to provide the basics like electricity, water, and food. They cited the pandemic disruption of supply chains, the 2021 power grid crisis in Texas that left millions without power, and recent outages of AT&T mobile users. So there you go. Now, this is a tough pill to swallow for some folks. It is. And I know some of the events I've gone to in the past would not be very accepting of all folks from all political stripes. And I get it, because like folks are going to attract like folks. But what I'm excited about is the concept of prepping does not know any sort of political stripe or bent. So when we look at this, we can say, you know what? Let's encourage folks, because once again, I've said it many, many times, prepping, folks come to prepping almost exclusively through fear because of an event or something they're scared of. And prepping is a kind of cathartic way for them to deal with their fears and deal with the things dealing with the things they can control. You can't control all of the big things, but you can definitely control what you can. Enough said. So that being said, I hate that phrase, but that being said, events like Self Reliance Festival, where both sides of the political spectrum show up, I love seeing, it's crazy. And I went, you go to prepper camp, which skews very far right. And then I went last year to the Thrivalist Fair in Addy, Washington, which I would say definitely skews a little further left. But what I love is where we meet in the middle. We meet on things like self-reliance. We meet on things like growing our own gardens. We meet on things like we don't trust the government. We meet on things like entrepreneurship, all of the above. And everybody looks at the world and they say, something ain't right with this thing. We know it isn't right. And that's okay. But let's handle what we can handle. Let's deal with what we can deal with. And the rest we'll ignore. And it doesn't mean we have to agree on anything. It doesn't mean we have to agree on everything. We just have to agree that we can still work together for this kind of stuff, even while not being blue or red, if that makes sense. So there you go. All right. So Ego Happen says, I like your show. I like how you explained yourself further. I like your show. Thank you very much. I appreciate you as well. It's great to see you on here. Lone Canadian says, hippies and communes. Yep, same thing. Darkwing Dave says, meanwhile, in the free state of Idaho, a bill is about to become law that bans cities and counties from making any rules preventing someone from carrying a knife outside of courthouses and police stations, or create a tax for selling or purchasing. Love it. I love that I live so close to Idaho, though. Definitely. Yeah. Anyway, what a great state. Love to hear it. And Lone Canadian says, some of us don't have close cropped hair. We're just bald. Oh, yeah. There you go. Oh, boy. Watch that. Yep. For those on the audio, I just flashed everybody with my bald head. Flashed? Oh, that's the wrong word, Tim. There you go. And Darkwing Dave says, folks in WA, Washington are definitely behind enemy lines. Yes, they are. And it sucks. California, Canada, whatever. But when it comes down to it, we are definitely all fighting the same fight. I don't like using that kind of terminology, but we're all just trying to be a little more prepared. We're all trying to live a little further outside the system, and we're all trying to be able to take care of ourselves even when the shit ever does hit the fan. So that's our look at the Stranger Than Fiction news this week. I always love it. This has been fun. This part of the show has always been a lot of fun. So first sponsor we got to thank this evening before we move on to the workshop wasteland is Fortress Canine. My good buddy, Joel Riles, who has just up and moved from the very warm state of Florida to somewhere quite a bit warmer, cooler. I said warmer. And still running his operation. And if you are the type of person who wants to be inspired, but also told how it is, give Joel a listen. He's got the Protection Dog podcast. He took a chance as our very first sponsor. And I will be smoking a cigar with him in probably 2 weeks, less than 2 weeks now. So it's going to be great to see him. So give him some love, guys. Let's take a quick look back at the comments before we slide into Workshop Wasteland. Mitch says 32 years in Washington was enough for me. I moved to Wisconsin. Well, there is a really nice looking house for $1.1 million that you could use. And Byron Roberts sums it up completely. I really should have said that. We all just want to be happy and left alone. And for those out there who aren't familiar with the non-aggression principle, that's really the simplest form of interaction with one another. Quite often folks have heard the term anarchy and they think anarchy is a collapse in civilization. Well, that has become the popular definition of it, but truly anarchy means without ruler. It doesn't mean that there won't be rules, but everything is going to be, everybody is going to be allowed to make their choice. Everything is voluntary. So what is the non-aggression principle? It is balanced down, boiled down to don't hurt me and don't take my shit. If you don't do that, we don't have a problem, because whatever you do on your side of the fence doesn't affect me whatsoever. So have a nice day. And in the words of Byron Roberts, it is, we all want to be happy and left alone. There you go. Pretty hard to be happy when people are stealing your shit and hurting you. But other than that, your happiness is up to you. There you go. All right. So moving right along.
Dead. They're all dead. Everyone, you and I are in a dead world. And I'm glad it's dead. Honky tonk.
Coming up next is Workshop Wasteland.
So we have this week just a couple of little things in the Workshop Wasteland. And for those who wonder what the Workshop Wasteland happens to be, well, it's really just a quick look at popular culture in dystopian and post-apocalyptic fiction, movies, audiobooks, maybe even some music at some point or another. So I hope you enjoy this. But one of the greatest, okay, I need to back up. This is from giantfreakingrobot.com. They're one of my favorite sites for post-apocalyptic pop culture news. I don't necessarily agree with them on their title, but if you are a George A. Romero fan, the greatest zombie movie ever gets theatrical return for anniversary. It's a move sure to thrill horror aficionados. George A. Romero's seminal zombie film, Dawn of the Dead, gets a re-release to commemorate the 45th anniversary of the film. It'd be an awfully fun film to see in theaters. Put it at that. It says the theatrical re-release will be for only a limited time only and will occur in 90 theaters and drive-ins across the U.S. and Canada. I would love to see this in a drive-in. That would be a lot of fun. I've yet in my life to ever go to a drive-in, and I would love to at some point. And Chris Dixon says, watch Panic in Year Zero again the other day. Wifey was not impressed with it. Interesting. Becky actually really liked that film. I think that film, of all my recommendations for classic post-apocalyptic, I would think that would be one of the most approachable films on the list. But I'm just going to put it out there that if folks aren't used to black and white 1950s style acting, then you might not dig it. But yeah, I like that one for sure. Tell your wife, well, don't blame me. You can, because I'm not there. It's better blame me than you, right, Chris? So anyway, if you're into zombie films, a classic is definitely coming back. So I decided, since I put together a list of 4 last week and folks keep asking for it, I'll give you a list of 4 more films that I've enjoyed over the years. Post-apocalyptic. This is going to span the 70s and the early 80s. There's not a lot. There were some. I've never actually seen Soylent Green, only bits and pieces, so I couldn't recommend that for you. And Planet of the Apes. It's a good film. I don't love the original like a lot of people do, but I didn't see it till many years after it came out, of course. But my first choice from 1978 is Invasion of Body Snatchers. It's got a fairly young Donald Sutherland in it, and it is just absolute classic horror. It's one of those don't fall asleep stories, and it has been remade on 3 or 4 different occasions. If you've never taken the time to go back and watch the original Invasion of the Body Snatchers, it is most definitely an end of the world style movie, but do yourself a favor. Well, again, it is 70s horror, so you got to take it with a grain of salt. Interpret it with the time, because things in the 70s, the movies, they definitely had a different cadence to them. They would build slowly, take their time. Things were off-putting, I guess, but I love it. Becky and I watched it a couple of years back again, and it's definitely my favorite of all the different invasion films, Invasion of the Body Snatchers. So that's one. Number 2, Mad Max from 1979. This is one I need to go back and rewatch, because it's been a lot of years since I watched it, and I was pretty young when I did, maybe 20, 21, and I don't know if I completely appreciated it for what it was, because it's almost become a meme in the culture. Just some of the, the leather and the football gear, post-apocalyptic bikers, they've all become tropes. They were well fleshed out in the 1980s. But definitely a good film, a very, very young, still very much Australian Mel Gibson, and it has spawned off into many different sequels, including Mad Max Fury Road, which I loved. And later on this year is a prequel to it called Furiosa. I can't pronounce it for you, but basically the character that Charlize Theron played in Fury Road is getting a prequel. So it looks like it should be pretty good. And it's great to see Tori the mom in here this evening. And Chris Dixon says, don't be desensitized, go in with a fresh mind. Yes, sir. That's exactly what I agree with. So we had Invasion of the Body Snatchers from 78, Mad Max from 79, and then two of the darkest films on my list from the early to mid 80s, both made for TV films. I don't know how either of these were actually put on public TV, but here you go. The Day After. This was a movie from the US, made for TV, I believe, I don't know if it was CBS or PBS that put it on at the time. The effects of a devastating nuclear holocaust on a small town residents of eastern Kansas. No real big names in the movie. There's a young Steve Guttenberg who goes on to Police Academy fame later on. That's, I guess, a recognizable name. But it is a dark and dingy film that deals with, I guess, what was expected in something like that. So, again, if you want a dark and dirty version of what would happen if a nuclear bomb was dropped in a small town, Kansas, which is kind of funny because there's some similarities to the Jericho storyline, small town, Kansas, but I digress. So if you want to watch it, be warned, there's no happy ending in this. It's very realistic. It must have scared the shit out of people when it premiered 42 years. I can't believe. Can anyone else believe that 1983 is 42 years ago? And just when you thought that the movies couldn't get any darker, The Day After, a TV movie from 1984, was only topped by yet another made-for-TV movie from 1984, the British counterpart. This was kind of like, you guys remember when Ants and Bug's Life came out, or Armageddon, or Deep Impact? Two movies being worked on separately, really didn't know the same kind of themes. This is what happened with Threads and The Day After. This one here, the effects of a nuclear holocaust on the working class city of Sheffield, England, and the eventual long-term effects of nuclear war on civilization. So this one basically follows a small town emergency management group who goes underground to watch, basically to react to the nuclear fallout, the nuclear bomb. And it is right there, the most terrifying portrayal of a nuclear war ever put on film. And it is. This is the worst. This one has the longest time frame. It is an epic in the truest sense. So epic basically means a story told over many years, basically. So if you've never seen Threads, watch it. I mean, hang on. Only watch it if you've got a strong stomach for things that aren't the happiest in the world whatsoever. So my 4 picks for this week. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you 4 picks a week until I run through my entire list. And then I'll go back and each week we'll do a deeper dive into one of the films. So it'll fit into this kind of 5-minute workshop wasteland segment. So I hope you enjoy it. All right, let's take a quick look back at the comments here. Chris Dixon says, Mad Max is great in Spanish with subtitles. Don't ask me how I know. Well, Fury Road was actually re-released in a black and white kind of edition, which was very similar to The Mist. So I would love to see it in black and white, but maybe not with Spanish subtitles. Byron Roberts loves Mad Max and The Road Warrior. Lone Canadian says, I got Jericho on DVD. I need to go back and watch it again. I actually think I'm going to go back and start going. I like going to a lot of the thrift stores. I think I'm going to start putting together a bit of a DVD kind of collection. Just one of those things, you know, I could put a bunch on a USB and that sort of thing, but there's something nice about having some sort of physical media anyhow. And Tori the mom says the Resident Evil series is my favorite apocalyptic series. Yes, I do like them. I like the early ones a little bit better. Always had a thing for Mila Jovovich. Even back in me and the girls watched Dazed and Confused recently. That was might have been her very first film. But yeah, she is great in the Resident Evil films. And they are good. I don't mind them at all. My favorite, I don't know if you could put me on the spot to pick one, but 28 Days Later and the Dawn of the Dead remake are probably two of my favorite for sure. And good evening to Gunfighter Concealment, someone who is forever commenting on the polls that we have on YouTube, and I really appreciate it. Guys, all I can do is show up and put out all this quality content, and the fact that you guys listen to me and take some time and really interact as a community just makes my day. So Gunfighter, for sure, thank you for doing that, and all you other folks out there too, thanks for taking the time. We've had some of these surveys slash kind of interaction things. We've had over 200 folks who have taken the time to fill them out. So Gunfighter says he comments for the algorithm. I know you do, but you also provide value for it. So thank you very, very much. And Clark Deacon says, my wife can't watch anything even remotely intense, so I haven't watched anything scary in 5 years. I'm sorry about that. My brother-in-law is the same way. And Tori the mom says Black Summer is decent too. That was what was that show? Project Z something. It was a spinoff of that, and I've never really watched it, but I would like to see it at some point. So Clark Deacon says, build it and they will come, Tim. Yes, they will. I appreciate it. Thank you, brother. All right, so that was the end of Workshop Wasteland, and so next we have...
stay in the back room. You stay in the back room. And you keep your gun handy. Keep your gun handy. Our country is still full of thieving, murdering patriots.
Get ready. I read it on the internet.
All right, so this one we have, for those who don't know, the weekly segment called I Read It on the Internet is where we take a look at our preppers, which is a great system, a great kind of forum. Like I said, Reddit has its issues, but man, there is some top-notch content of folks sharing things over there. So let's dive into that. And Beth Emily also says, yes, we will. When you build it, they will come. Thank you, guys. I really appreciate you. And Chris Dixon says, I love that line with the smile. Thieving, lying, patriots. Ain't that the truth? That comes from, for those who don't know, Panic in Year Zero. And probably my favorite classic apocalyptic film. So if you get a chance, watch it. And we will definitely get these damn echoes worked out at some point. I'm not going to talk about it a lot tonight. I have done all the testing I can and everything works perfect until I go live with, I don't know why Thursday's doing it, but we'll figure it out. So this week over on our preppers, posted by Flashy Improvement 5. I love the names they come up with. My shit hits the fan scenario was becoming homeless. This is a sad story. I'll warn you ahead of time. Most times with the Reddit stuff, I'm, again, don't think it's my story because it isn't, but I'm just going to share the whole story. It's not that long. It's just long enough that you need the context. So bear with me. But my SHTF was being homeless. My hubby and I both worked at UPS and had small businesses. So to start with, that's decent paying jobs, and they were doing everything right. They'd also built small businesses. Then my hubby got sick and he closed his business. He was denied disability by UPS. 1 month after he was fired for not going into work, he lost the ability to walk. My hubby got sick and he was denied disability. I closed my business at a loss to take care of him while still working full time. After 3 years, he died. I had to take bankruptcy on all his outstanding bills. My health was getting bad too. I was in constant pain. I thought it all related to the stress of taking care of my husband, but it turned out to be a mix of colon and back issues. Again, we're all going to get older. When we stop getting older, we've broke the number one rule of preparedness now, haven't we? I was a lifelong prepper, but many of my preps were in storage due to taking care of my hubby and having to move. I bought a sleeping bag at a thrift store. I was already using kerosene heat because I couldn't afford a new furnace. I had off-grid lights to some degree. When I went on to short-term disability, I moved into a 1967 mobile home in an old trailer park. The roof leaked, but beggars can't be choosers. I lost my disability claim, had no money for 4 months. I was able to cook on my kerosene heater in the winter and on my propane stove in the summer. Friends would buy me fuel. I lived off my deep pantry for 4 months straight. I baked bread every other day, and I ate fairly well. After 4 months, I got food stamps, but that was it. In the summer, it was too hot to stay in the mobile home. I just used it for storage mainly. I made a bed out between 2 trees and slept outside so I could keep watch on the mobile home. Now, before I go on, this is the type of scenario, honestly, that we all prep for. But sometimes life just jumps up and hits you in the face with the 2x4 harder than you'd expect. And this poor woman sounds like she did everything she could right, and shit still went sideways. But she had built some resiliency into her life. She had community. She had friends who were willing to help her. And she wasn't afraid to suffer and struggle just a little bit. After about 18 months of squatting, it just gets worse and worse. The trailer park took me to court to evict me and condemned the mobile home. At that time, an old friend heard about my homelessness and offered a coach for me to move on. I finally had surgery on one of my vertebrae and my left foot. I now live full-time in a 2001 RV in the back of my friend's property. That sounds ideal for a lot of preppers. I really love that. I now live full-time in a 2001 RV. I still prep, but I'm much smarter about things, and I personally only get what I need or buy. What I learned, here's some of her tips, and I think these are awesome. I would love to sit down, to go sometime, maybe in Edmonton or something. I don't want this to come across as disingenuous, though, so I don't know if I would actually record it or if I would just sit down and chat, but I really would enjoy the opportunity to sit down with some homeless folks and just talk about what they do to get by, because I think it's one of those things that we just don't have a friggin' clue about, and I've always been interested in like the hobos from the 30s. I know it's become romanticized and stuff, but just the ingenuity of it. And, the old symbols they used to use and their ability to cook and stay warm and layer up. And they're just, I think that, anyway, as awful as what they've been put through, they have learned some incredible lessons. And I would love to sit down and just share them from them, get some of their experience, I guess. So I don't know. I don't even know if I ever will do it, but the only way I would do it is if I could do it without it coming across as, for clout or for clicks or something. And I don't know how to do that, but I'd love to interview someone like at some point. So what she learned, of course, a cot is invaluable. It really helps the comfort level. A good sleeping bag will literally save your life. Water cannot be emphasized enough. I constantly felt dirty and smelly. With my back issues, I couldn't carry large amounts of water. I should have had a bank of water stashed, but I didn't. Lesson learned. I now have a stack of 4-gallon containers of water, a manual pump, and a rechargeable pump. I love hearing that. She also has a folding dry sink and a folding bucket to carry water. I picked up one of those folding buckets off of Temu. I thought it was going to be an absolute piece of shit, and the thing was awesome. I love it. I don't use it a ton. Right now it's holding kind of electronic stuff out in my garage, but the thing's held up really good. Sanitation wasn't that big of a deal with a bucket toilet. I had access to a dumpster, so I just dumped it fairly often. As a female, the liquid was the issue, but I tried to pee as much as possible down the bathtub. Again, sucks, but I like hearing that. The urine adds a lot of weight to the bucket. Females really need a urine diverting toilet seat. Males just need a urinal. I now have several female urinals and a much better bucket system. I didn't have an emergency radio. The quiet will drive you crazy, especially if you're used to noise. I worked at an airport in an office space. It was always busy. No joke, you start hearing things. I couldn't sleep for the silence. Not the same thing, but when I travel, I take a portable white noise machine and I love it. It allows me to blank out the noise when I'm tenting or also in hotel rooms. So I used to go to hotel rooms and you'd never know what the fan was going to be like. This definitely helps with the tinnitus and the ringing in the ears. Light's another thing. Lights make you feel human. The dark is very long and silent. I had outside solar lights I brought inside, but they didn't last long. Entertainment was non-existent without power. I couldn't read ebooks. Without lights, I couldn't read paper books. I was screwed for entertainment, and my deck of cards only worked in daylight. Oh, I could still knit and crochet and stuff with my back issues. I spent most of my time flat on my back, saving my energy for cooking and simple survival. I honestly thought I would die of boredom. Having a way to cook off-grid is paramount. You need at least 2 ways, 3 if possible. But I was living in a trailer park where they had outlined grills and open fires. I had to cook inside and hide the flames. It was such a fire risk. So plan ahead, have your cooking gear and fire skills ready. Okay. Wow. What an incredible, resilient lady who went through her husband getting sick, her husband passing away, losing businesses, losing jobs, her health deteriorating, losing all the money she had, living in squalor, and then eventually getting evicted even from that, and relying on the help from community and just her sheer will of survival. Kudos to her. I can't imagine she obviously didn't enjoy herself even one bit, but what an incredible lady to go through that. And that to me is just one of those things that I love to be able to hear from folks. And, it's sad that people have to go through it, but maybe their experience will help someone else who ends up having troubles just like that. So there you go. All right. What do we got next for you? All right. And for those who don't know, for those following, playing the game at home, all the links to all of these articles are in the show notes tonight. So there you go. All right. Next is Sunshine News. And we have got right there, bring it up for you. Give me 1 second and we will switch over to Willow.
Hello and welcome to today's Sunshine Prepper News. I'm Willow, the Sunshine Prepper, here to spread a bit of positivity on the unavoidable doom and gloom. I've got 2 stories for you. On the menu today, we've got observations about Boeing, the quality of their planes, and the suspicious death of a former employee turned whistleblower, and then some curious updates about the availability of police officers in a city that is hopefully not near you. Before we get into the gloom, please join me for 5 seconds of incredibly awkward laughter that hopefully helps invoke your real laughter. All right. Maybe I'll make a video on the benefits of laughter. Leave a comment below if that's something you're interested in. But suffice to say, laughter is really medicine and a great way to combat the gloom. All right. So first up, we've got Boeing, and they are showing that they are going off the rails a bit. There have been quite a few mishaps, and it's finally drawing attention and investigation. A quick summary of some of the unusual events that have occurred. A 787 Dreamliner experienced a sudden plunge mid-flight, throwing people around the cabin, which might not sound like much, but they were tossed around. A few people hit the ceiling, thrown across several rows. No one died, but a few received some not so minor injuries. Most of them weren't so bad. And then a door blew off another Boeing. It was a 737 MAX 9, left a gaping hole in the side of the plane and ripped the headrest off the seats shortly after taking off from Portland. The flight crew described the blowout as a very violent, explosive event when it occurred. There were 177 people on that flight. I cannot imagine how terrifying, how absolutely horrifying that was. A good day to be wearing your brown pants. And then another 737, also coming out of Portland, was forced to make an emergency landing due to fumes in the cabin. And then a tire fell off another Boeing plane after it took off from San Francisco, destroying at least one car in their long-term parking garage. And then an engine fire forced another Boeing to make an emergency landing in Houston, Texas after takeoff. Now, I don't know who failed all the quality control checks on all the others, but apparently for that one, according to United Airlines, the engine ingested some plastic bubble wrap that was on the airfield prior to departure. To top all that off with Boeing, an honorable man, a former employee who reported safety problems at Boeing and who was actively involved in providing evidence in a whistleblower lawsuit against them, died on Saturday from an apparent self-inflicted wound, according to a coroner in South Carolina. They found him dead in his car in a parking lot. That's not incredibly fishy timing at all. Nothing to see here. Well, that wraps up Boeing. So I wanted to touch on this other story real quick, because what really gets to be concerning is what happens next. Will this spread? Hopefully not to a city near you. So wake up world, it's 2024. And right now in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, the police department announced they're not responding to calls that are not emergencies, that are not actively happening. Instead, these calls will be routed to an enhanced telephone reporting unit. And if that wasn't gloomy enough, between 3 a.m. and 7 a.m., no officers will be at any of the stations. And during the night shift, they're going to have as few as 20 officers watching over the whole city, depending on shifts. And for some reason, they also thought it was a brilliant idea to broadcast this. It's like saying, hey, criminals, your easiest hours of operation are now 3 to 7 a.m. Well, time for 5 more seconds of laughter to shake off the impending danger of defunding police while apologizing and making excuses for criminals. Okay, so what can you do about all of this? Well, don't have sudden paranoia about flying. While it is huge in the news, the percentage of people actually dying from flying is incredibly low. And if you haven't started exercising your 2A rights, today is the PSA that sometimes help is minutes away when seconds matter. So, yeah, especially if you're in Pittsburgh, you're on your own from 3 a.m. to 7 a.m. So please equip yourself if you haven't yet. Thank you so much for tuning in this week. Sunshine Prepper out.
Willow's incredible, guys. For those who don't know, Willow is our roving reporter she comes in with her own little dose of sunshine. She shares a couple of doom and gloom news stories with her copyright chipper demeanor. She's awesome. I love what she brings. She is committed to getting us a content every week for 3 months. I have definitely enjoyed what she brings. Now, about the Boeing situation, what in the world is going on there, folks? I have no idea. It's a mess. I'm not saying I wouldn't get on a Boeing plane, but my God, to have that many issues and then something happened to their, I don't know, the whistleblower gone just like that, right? So there you go. What a crazy situation. I don't know what else to say about it, but the Pittsburgh police scenario is 10 times worse in my mind. When I was in Tennessee last time, I went through a fast food place. I went up to the window or to the order speaker, and I realized, that does not sound like a real person. And then I looked down a little bit further, and it says, your order is being taken by artificial intelligence. I thought, well, now they didn't do a horrible job, let me put it that way, but it was not super accurate. That's what I'm saying. I'm not sure I love the idea of, hey, this isn't really an emergency, or this is an emergency, but nobody's there, so we're going to put you through to an automated phone answering system. This shit just doesn't fly with me, folks. Anyway, Willow does a great job. If you haven't followed her yet, guys, do me a favor and do that. Let's bring her back up here real quick so you can see her channel one more time. So she's at 7. So she started brand new. I would say, what has she done? Maybe 5 or 6 segments for us. I think this might be 7 now. She's up to 71 subscribers. She really needs to be up to 100. So Sunshine Prepper, I believe her @ symbol is Sunshine Prepper TN for Tennessee, but her stuff is awesome. I didn't get her link into the show notes tonight, but it will be. But just give her a search and give her a follow because she's awesome. All right, what segment do we have next? Oh, actually, let me go back here right quick because there is Rachel C. says, hey, Tim, did your girls ever watch The Big Comfy Couch? Willow reminds me of Lunette in the best way. What a wonderful memory she brings back. So I'm 43. I used to watch The Big Comfy Couch just a little bit, and my sister definitely watched it a bunch. And you are 100% correct. She is definitely reminds me of the Lunette from The Big Comfy Couch. Now, anybody out there, I don't know if that was an American show as well. I think it might have just been Canadian, but she definitely has an infectious joyness about her. That's for sure. Hey, Rachel Brown, good to have you. And Gunfighter Concealment said, in my opinion, this is what happens when a company, Boeing, hires people for their wokeness, not hiring for their talent. Could be 100% true. I don't know enough about the situation, but I will agree with you that when folks aren't hired by merit, they're hired by some other less than objective reality. That's when we have problems. So there you go. All right. Next, we have a quick look at this week in the workshop. Holy shit. This week in the workshop has been a busy week in the workshop. As Clark Deacon saw today when he stopped by, it was great to see him. I sent him off with a few patches, and we did take a picture. I'll post it in Telegram later, but I got thinking, I'm pretty sure that is the 5th visit I have had at home from delinquents and from the workshop community. And it's great. Most times it's just been Jeff and Sandy and their daughters came all as once. And then every other time it's just been a single person, but it's awesome. I love meeting up in real life. And I also, how exciting it is that we're actually building a Canadian community up here, because when I first started, and it's still this way, you got to know 80 to 90% of, actually, no, it's down to like 75 to 80% of the folks that follow my stuff are from the US. However, we're getting a bigger number of us Canuckistans up here. Whether we love the country or hate it, this is the cross that we have to bear. So it's good to have you. Rachel C says, I just realized I'm old 39 and my little sister loved the show. And Rachel Brown says, I heard about Big Comfy Coach and I'm in PA. Cool. All right. So let's bust through the few things I did this week, both for inspiration and accountability. Number one, I got my new truck outfitted with all the gear. That was a big one. Like I said, I ended up running into some trouble. I didn't actually have any problems, but I just felt absolutely unprepared to travel in that truck without my gear. So I made a few changes, but it's all outfitted. And yeah, I'm definitely happy. Went out to my brother-in-law's garage the other night. He installed the slow open tailgate for me so that I don't just let the damn thing go and smack down like I did. I got a bunch of other upgrades that are coming, but not until I get back from the trip. We're going to install some LED light bars, a couple of LED 4-bulb fixtures. They're going to fit down where the fog lights go, and they're going to point out to the ditches, only for when there's no traffic coming toward me, because we have a ton of deer out here. What else? I've been fighting with Google Merchant Services. I've been trying to get my merch store linked to YouTube, and I think I'm finally making some headway. I sent an email to Google, YouTube, whatever, and they actually got back to me, and they outlined exactly what needed to be changed. It turned out that I had some templated text in my return and shipping profile pages that I didn't eliminate, where it says insert address here, and I didn't actually insert my address. So that looked fishy to them. So that's been fixed. All right, what next? Oh yeah, I'm probably going to do a little review video on this, but I keep a shovel in the back seat of my car, just a small folding one. And for a couple of years, I'd used a winter snow shovel I got from Costco. But when it was folded up, it was still 18 inches long. So I picked up a nice off-road shovel from Harbor Freight in the States. When it's packed up, it's only about 6 inches. So that replaced it. That's actually quite a bit smaller, but sturdier. So I'm looking forward to testing that out a little bit as well. We dealt with a flood at the daycare. I don't want to go into all the details, but holy shit, insurance can be such a friggin' racket. So short story here. But last Friday, we had some snow melt that went into the basement of the daycare. It affected some of the laminate floor. We called the insurance company. They said, yep, we're going to send out a reclamation company right away. He'll take an estimate, they'll tear it up, and then we'll start working on it. So they send the guy out. He's immediately followed by a reclamation company who cleans it all up, cleans up half of it, leaves the gear behind. Then they send out another insurance person to let us know, oh, you're not covered, and you're going to have to pay for all that reclamation yourself, even though the insurance company hired them. So we're in a big fight with them because we're pretty sure we should have coverage for that. And if we didn't, we sure as shit never would have hired a company out of Edmonton that's going to charge us $10,000 to haul up 100 square feet of laminate floor and leave behind 2 fans. So there you go. Ask me what I think about my insurance company right at the moment. Monday is our inspection at the daycare. Becky was up there today, and my brother-in-law, sister-in-law, they were working their asses off while I was down here dealing with that old rotten bathroom I'm working on. So they're ready. They are absolutely ready for Monday's inspection. I'm excited. That's the one, folks. I know you've heard me talk about friggin' inspection since the cows come home, but this is the one. This is the inspection that brings us the license, which brings in the money, which opens the daycare, which, oh, it's awesome. There you go. I've been working on that bathroom reno like crazy over at the rental. It needs to be done. Well, it needs to be done by Monday because I'm leaving Tuesday morning early to go on what's actually shaped up to be an 8-week road trip. I did the math, and I think it's going to be 56 days. That's a little long, but it's going to be worth it. So there you go. But the bathroom reno is coming slowly but surely. I think I'll be done tomorrow. I just need to plumb in the water supply lines for the shower and then hang a shower surround. It's not going to be perfect, but I'm excited. Rachel Brown says, go, Becky, go. I agree. That woman is a hard-working son of a bitch, and I love her to death. What do we got? I've been prepping my presentations. I set a goal starting last week that 1 hour every morning I would come down here and I would brainstorm or I would write. And I've actually made really good headway. It's funny because I've had a month to prepare these presentations. But again, the urgency, I needed the urgency to really get at it. And this 1 hour a day, I completely revamped, or I'd say 25% revamped my poverty mindset presentation. That's for Kentucky Sustainable Living. And I have a brand new presentation that I'll be doing versions of at Self Reliance Festival and Living Free in Tennessee. And that's basically called Failure is Not an Option. And I'm really pleased with how that's coming together. But I would say, I don't know, I think Nicole said it takes about 20 hours to put together a decent presentation. And I would say that's about what it is for me as well. So I love spending the time. I love creating something like that from scratch. So there you go. What else we got? I packaged up, Becky and I bought some Canadian junk silver. We shined it up, put it in little holders, and I'm going to be bringing it to the events. I'll be selling it where it's Canadian down in the States. Hopefully it'll command a slight premium, or at least by the time I bought it, the price will have gone up. But I'll also be looking to trade at events. So I will have a good little bit of Canadian silver to offload at these events. Vac sealed some emergency kits, socks, underwear, and all of the toiletries. I want to talk about this for a minute. So we have always had emergency kits. Well, not always, but for the last 5 years, basically what we call, this is an awful term, but our drop dead emergency kit. This is, we're out somewhere, we can't get back to the house for our grab and go bags, and we have to survive out of our vehicle for, we used to be 2 or 3 days. Now we've got it set up for a week. So what we put in there is all the toiletries. We got deodorant. We have some hotel shampoo, so it's smaller, bar of soap, some Q-tips, toothbrush, toothpaste, a week's worth of prescriptions for all of them, and 2 pairs of underwear, 2 pairs of socks for me, Becky, and the girls. So it'd been about 3 years since we went through it. We went back through because I moved it over to a new vehicle. We always had it in big Ziploc bags. We switched it up to chamber vacuum sealed bags. Takes up a lot less space. We're able to get a little more stuff in there. We realized the girls have grown a lot in 3 years, so it's a good thing we went over it. Prescription wise was pretty close. We had to add a couple of pills here, take a couple away there. But other than that, so it's all set. Now, the reason I say this is about an hour before I went live tonight, I get one of those dreaded text messages that I hate. It's from Dad, and everything's okay, just so you know. But it says, hey, give me a call right away. I'm like, okay. He says, hey, Mom's in the hospital. She's okay, but she's been having stomach problems for a few months now. And finally, they have a really shitty medical system in Nova Scotia. It's really, really bad, guys. She couldn't get to a doctor. She finally got to a doctor. A nurse practitioner said, you've got gallbladder problems. And so she had a gallstone, I guess they call it. So they rushed her to Yarmouth, which was an hour away. And she's going to have hopefully orthoscopic surgery and be home tomorrow if all goes well. However, the first thing Dad mentioned to me was they left in a hurry and didn't have any preparations ready for them. So he's down there. He had to go out and he had to buy some stuff tonight. He needed the phone charger. And I just felt bad. That's all. So I'm going to try to put together maybe a little kit for him and send it out, because that kind of shit, most people don't even think about what would happen. Your wife or your husband goes to the doctor and they're like, you need to have surgery right now. You need to leave. Well, you don't normally have time. The night when, we weren't prepared when Becky went into early labor with the twins at 31 or 32 weeks. We left from home, and about 8 hours later, we had gone through 3 hospitals, and we were 2.5 hours from home at that point. So you don't ever know. So just a absolute bare bones. Hey, I could live out of the car. I could sleep in underground parking. I could hang out at a hospital for 2 or 3 or 4 days. Because the reason we picked a week was we figure at least within a week, we're going to be able to fill our prescriptions if it's an emergency, hopefully. And we're going to be able to get a hold of some more supplies. But, if it's 3-4 days of a really shitty situation, having a kit like that goes a long way, guys. We had adventures in property management this week. We had one furnace completely die. Never had it happen before yet since I've been doing property management, but they went out to check on it. The heat chamber had cracked and it was slowly releasing a bit of carbon monoxide into the house. Not enough to set off the alarm yet, but enough for the guy to notice it down in the room when he went in with the sensor. So they shut the furnace off, and the tenants were only 2 days without heat, rods, heating, and plumbing and heating. Take great care of me. The homeowner that I look after, they had to come up with $6,000 to replace the furnace. So if you do ever get into property management, make sure you keep yourself a little slush fund, because things get really tight for them and it shouldn't have been nearly that bad. So anyway, they took care of it. Done. There you go. Just picked up a couple of new power stack batteries. I don't know if you ever saw my original review on those tiny DeWalt power stacks. I love that battery, and I completely lost it last May doing renovations at our trailer that is now rented. I'm guessing it's in the wall somewhere, but it's never reappeared. Don't know what happened. Don't know where it went. So it was time to get some new ones because those are my go-tos for all the small stuff. Haven't tried the 5 amp hour. The reviews on them have been mixed, but I definitely like the 1.7 amp hour batteries. They are the perfect weight to power ratio, I think. And finally, like I mentioned, Clark stopped by. And if you don't know who Clark is, you can meet him in the Telegram group, but he is, barely in his mid-20s, married, owns a house, has a business, has kids. The dude has got it going on. He is kicking ass and taking names. And if you want some tips or just some inspiration on how to build self-reliance in your life, just look at Clark for a minute, and I'm sure he'll give you some advice. So there you go. All right, what do we got next? Real quick, I think I'm going to have to rename this segment Finding Freedom. I love it, but it's turning into a meme segment, and I love memes, and these are inspirational memes, but maybe we need to come up with a better name for it. So you let me know. But here is the first one for this week. And this came out of a conversation we had in the Telegram group with my brother, Chris Dixon, and a few others. But it says, be decisive. Right or wrong, make a decision. The road of life is paved with flat squirrels who couldn't make a decision. True story. We talked about this on Telegram last week, but here it is. No matter what you do, you're going to question what you do. It doesn't mean you're going to regret it, but whether you have good success or not such good success, you're always going to look back and wonder, I wonder if I could have done this or could have done that. But I can promise you one thing and one thing alone, that the only way to guarantee that you'll never make progress is to stand in the same spot, and you'll end up paving the road with all the other bodies of dead squirrels out there. I love this. I've always said that cliches are cliches because they're truths that have just been repeated long enough that they start to lose their meaning, but it doesn't make them any less true. And be decisive, right or wrong, make a decision. Amen. Love it. Great one. Let's move on to the other meme of this week for Finding Freedom. And again, I find a lot of these throughout the week, and I'll share them in the Telegram group, and I want to share them to everybody else. But it's the idea behind them. It's the concept. Again, here it is. You ready? Start a business, $1,000. Oh, that's too much. Buy a new iPhone, $1,000. No problem. Healthy groceries, $100. Too much. Dinner and dessert, $100. Yeah, why not? Watch Netflix 2 hours. One more episode. Learn a new skill, 2 hours. No time. Life is about choices. You ready for this? This is the thrust of this meme. Life is about choices. Stop blaming the lack of opportunity. 110%. You go back to last week's episode where the lady was talking about a maximum wage and how the only reason that Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos got rich is because they came to business in the mid-90s when there was tons of government subsidies for the internet. Well, here's the deal, folks. There were 300 other million people in North America who didn't seize the opportunities they did. They grabbed life by the balls and they made a mint. So again, it's all about the small things. Is $1,000 a lot of money to invest in a business? Sure it is. Somebody will say, well, it's okay. I financed the iPhone. Well, if you can figure out a way to get $999 on credit for some company to give you a phone, I'll bet you can figure out a way to get a $1,000 loan to go start your business. There you go. And Lone Canadian, you're 100% right. We'll go back to the comments here. No use regretting it. Not like you can go back in time and change it. 100%. And I live life with zero regrets. I always have. But it doesn't mean that a person's brain on occasion isn't going to say, wonder what would happen if I'd have done this. It's an interesting exercise. But yes, live life without regrets, folks, because it's the only life we get. And we're going to make the choices. And beating yourself up over what might have been, what could have been. Anybody know that song by Little Texas? I'm going way back there now. But what might have been? Yeah, great song, but not somewhere you need to live. Nostalgia is a hell of a drug. And if you want something that will help you to not pay attention to the present, live in nostalgia, baby. Rachel Brown says, was it Jack Spirko or John Willis that said fail faster so you can move on to success? It might be. It sounds like something John Willis would say. I know he said sleep faster, but that 100% true. I actually had a quote tonight in here that I eliminated from the show notes that was basically about that. If you wanted to find a successful person, find someone who has failed a ton. So there you go. All right. Next, got to mention Self Reliance Festival getting their big push to get tickets sold because the event is coming up quick. So Self Reliance Voices, Learning from Legends. It's a free webinar series. If you didn't hear about it, a gateway to self-sufficiency, regenerative agriculture, and building better lives. The fact that they said learning from legends and then put my picture on it definitely doesn't do them any justice, but there you go. So it's March 17th to 21st. I believe I'm going to be co-emceeing a couple of evenings. The whole idea is they're going to be replaying some of the best segments from past Self-Reliance festivals, and we're going to be offering commentary. We're going to be doing giveaways. So check it out. I threw a link in tonight, show notes, and across social media before I went live. So yeah, and if you do buy Self-Reliance Festival tickets, please use my link because I will make a small commission off that, and that helps helps keep the generators fueled up. But no, honestly, this is a business, and you guys know that. I don't need to hide anything. All right, next segment is the community mailbag.
It's the apocalypse. End of days. The judgment day. The end of the world, my friend.
Let's dig into community mailbag.
So first one I got this week was from Conrad Frank. Got it over on Telegram. He sent me a great suggestion for the book club. I haven't read it yet, hadn't even heard of it at the time, but said it meant a lot to him in the past, and it was Immortals by Tracy Hickman. If anybody else out there has read it, let me know, but I'm definitely going to download an audiobook just to give it a go and listen to it because I got about 60 hours of ass time, that sounds funny, in my Dodge here coming up right away, so I need some stuff to listen to. So what do we got from here? All right. So again, if you haven't noticed, I've been running polls and quizzes and interactivity things over on the YouTube community page because, well, two reasons. Number one, I love getting the feedback and I love getting all the comments, try to respond to as many as I can. But also, YouTube is really pushing that for engagement lately, and I've enjoyed it. So yeah, first one I did was, how many Americans consider themselves preppers? Had a few different answers, 121 respondents, 20 million people, 41% got it right. Crazy, 20 million people. And then Jake from Ravenwood Acres, he said, that's a surprising amount of preppers. I agree, but the better quote came from Todd, and he said, I know a lot of people who call themselves quote unquote preppers, but they're nowhere near prepared for anything more than a barbecue at the gun range. Those of us that have addressed the 6 basic categories of preparedness, food, water, shelter, security, energy, and health and sanitation, are few and far between. I do not disagree whatsoever. I will say that folks being interested or identifying as preppers is definitely a great step in the right direction. But again, we need to talk them down off the ledge, or we need to get them serious about it and say, hey, here you go. All right, next one was, if you could only stock one type of ammunition or one round, what would it be? And 18% said 22, 36% said 5.56, and 36% said 12 gauge. So basically it was one of those, you know, what's the perfect caliber, what's the perfect round, whatever you want to call it. But I was quite surprised. I figured, I really didn't know, to be honest. There was some great feedback on this, so let me share with you. But basically we went half and half. 36% said 5.56 or 12 gauge. And I know it's not realistic, but it's a fun thought experiment. So Robert Daly, a fellow content creator from Daily Woodworks, he said 12 gauge is the most versatile round. It can be loaded down for rats and snakes, medium for quail and other game birds, magnum for ducks, and ice my shoulder slugs for large game that walk bipedally. He didn't put that. I added that part in there. The B-Man J, 22 is the most used on the farm. Kills most animals without a headshot. Will kill anything with a headshot. Think of it as being only 0.003 smaller than the 223, just with less grains. It's quieter to shoot, takes up less room to store, and is cheaper to buy or reload. I do not disagree there whatsoever. I love it. They, you know, in a lot of the prepper fiction books, 12 gauge or 5.56 are the dollars, and the 22 shells are the pennies or the cents, and I like that. Gunfighter Concealment, we know you, said, if I stock up on shotgun ammo and I'm allowed to stock up on buckshot, slugs, and birdshot, I would pick shotgun ammo. If I could only stock up on one type of shotgun ammo, then I'm going 5.56. I could do almost anything with those 3 types of shells, buckshot, slug, and birdshot, and that's why I would pick shotgun. So there you go. If you weren't limited to just one type of shell, if you could take anything from 12 gauge, that would be his choice. And the poll for this week, or I think the most recent one or the second most, have you ever had to stop and offer assistance for a vehicle accident? 22% yes with no injuries, 30% no, I never have, and 48% was yes with injuries involved. I believe I've only ever had to stop and help with one accident, and it was going through, I believe it was Idaho, when we were heading south and we went up into kind of a mountainy area, hit a real nasty snowstorm. A guy in a Subaru went flying by me. I look over at Becky, and as I look over at Becky, I realized the car in front of me is no longer there, and he went flying in the ditch. He wasn't injured, but if he'd have spent any time out there, he certainly could have had some bad problems with the elements. So we brought him in the vehicle. He sat with us, and yeah. So this one again comes from Gunfighter Concealment. Said, I witnessed a vehicle turning left at a green arrow. The truck just blew right through the red light, smashed into the car. The guy in the truck was fine, but the lady in the car had a broken arm and a laceration to her leg. I took the seatbelt off because the car was smoking. Whew. Once I realized it was not actual smoke, it was just antifreeze steaming from the engine bay, I decided to leave her in the car in case she had other issues like spinal or neck. We pushed the vehicle off to the side of the road. I used the shears. I love this. This is great. Thank you for sharing this. I used the shears I got from Refuge Medical to cut the pants to see the wound. It wasn't too terribly bad, so I put a hemostatic gauze pad on it. Then I wrapped it with a SWAT tourniquet for pressure. As I was doing all of this, I told someone to call 911. Turns out she works for the police department, and I received, I love this, a challenge coin from our sheriff. I write this to tell everyone, you will need medical before you will need a firearm. Get some medical training or somebody's going to die on your watch. Thank you for sharing that, Gunfighter. So the other night, I was sitting up, just hadn't fallen asleep yet, so I was doing what I do. I think I ended up on Reddit. I ended up down a Reddit rabbit hole that had combat footage from the Ukrainian-Russian war. And this one was, somebody had asked, looking for actual real-life application of a tourniquet. So I was like, oh, this should be interesting. It was about a 15-minute video of this one poor Ukrainian soldier who had been shot to pieces. He did survive. I can't believe it. But the medic came upon him, found him lying on the ground. He was fairly pale, and he ended up having to apply 5 tourniquets to the dude. Yeah, 3 of his appendages were aerated. Let's put it that way. It was a mess, guys. And I wouldn't say go out and look at it, but it definitely, I don't know, just give me a different perspective on that. So there you go. This one comes from Bob Law. I can never get this one. Bob Lob Law's Law blog. And that comes from Arrested Development, I believe the name. But said, I got to be an instant responder once. Miraculously, his window was down. Noticed a truck idling across an intersection at a red light. Would have hit the car in front of me. He appeared to be having a seizure. I jumped out, I ran, grabbed his wheel, turned him into an open lane, reached my arm down, pushed the parking brake, put it into park, took the keys out. A nurse came over. I called 911 and directed traffic until paramedics came. I love that. Thank you guys for sharing these stories because I want to pat you all on the back for this stuff. This is great. I love hearing it. I want to pop back over to the comments here right quick. But Rachel Brown said that she guessed the number of preppers was lower than what it was, which I agree. And then Rachel says, yes, with injuries. The other guy with the fire company didn't have the tools to break the glass or cut the seatbelt. And my kid was an EMT. Me just first aid and CPR. Well, thanks for sharing that, Rachel. And there's all the pet emergencies. You know what? That's a really good point. We have had, I was just thinking that earlier today, actually. Becky and I were talking about some of the dogs we had over the years. And I remembered when Harley went out and got into a fight with some coyotes, and the coyotes literally attempted to bite his balls off. And we, again, sorry for the pun, but didn't have a pot to piss in. So we definitely couldn't afford to take him to the vet. So we cleaned him up and patched him up the best we could, and he did fine. But there are a lot of pet emergencies, and that is a good way, 2 things, for you or I to be a little more comfortable with first aid, but to also embrace the stress just a little bit because, man, it sucks when your pet's sick, and you don't want that to happen. But hopefully we can learn from it and not get desensitized, but just become acclimatized to it so that we know how to handle it. Because again, remember when Ed was on the show a couple of years ago from Iridium Solutions, he said, we don't rise to the occasion, we fall to our highest level of training. And that is just a perfect example of why first aid is needed. This one here, this comes from a Janie Anders, and this is regarding my interview that I did with James Wesley Rawls last year. And they said, thanks to Jim's book, I've been prepping for 20 years. Buying tins while on special. I'm guessing they're British if they say tins. I have 10 large crates full of long life food, plus 100 kilograms of rice. That's 220 pounds in freedom units, folks. Lots of wood and water stored up. Buying and saving heirloom seeds. Been living out of my veg and herb garden the last 5 years. I'm glad I did it because now I'm retired, not much cash to spend. I figure I have sufficient for perhaps a year. Obviously, also helping family and a few friends who have not prepped. Back in the day, the 70s, when I read Atlas Shrugged, I knew then problems were ahead living in South Africa. Now the country's on the verge of total collapse. I had hoped to move to the country, but it didn't work out. But I'll survive. Love the Patriot books. I just wanted to share that because, again, real world scenario. Someone who is living better because they found a prepping fiction book 20 years ago. Lone Canadian asks, did we save Harley's balls? Yes, we did. We didn't even need to stitch them up, thank goodness, but any further, and it would not have been a good scenario. But yeah, we did. His manhood was fully intact. Poor guy. Rachel Brown says, pets and livestock that gets into crap is good training for wound management and monitoring infection. Probably shared this story before, but many years ago, Becky and I got a couple of milking goats. And we, again, couldn't afford to trim their hooves. So I went on what was a forum at the time because YouTube wasn't a thing. And they said you could use like side cutting shears or something like that. So that's what I did. But I didn't read further down. So I went out, started trimming. I trimmed way too deep and she started gushing blood. And I thought, oh my God. So we went back in and we were trying to find the forum where we were scrolling through, panicking. Eventually we discovered that cornstarch was a great coagulant. So we were able to spread it on there, get the blood to stop. And after that, I'm not even sure what we did after that, but we tried not to have to do it ourselves. Let's put it that way. All right. And final piece of the mail from the community nail bag was from Mr. Sound Chaos. And this is regarding stuff from Temu. And I've had mixed results. I would say overall, slightly better than worse. So just in case anyone is really trying to look into cheap Temu solar panels, I got a 120 watt foldable solar panel from Temu for $80. It shipped via ship, and Temu messaged me 20 days later saying it was likely lost since they hadn't heard, and an update. They gave me a full refund. Then a week later, it arrived. Anyway, it was about 6 foot long, unfolded, and 2.5 feet wide. Gives me a consistent 90 to 110 watt under less than ideal winter sun to my Anchor battery. Works better than any of the Goal Zero, Anchor, etc. foldable panels I've tried, and came with adapters to convert it to any battery I own. It also has its own little charge controller with USB ports that works great. Very cool. I'm going to have to look into that, guys, because I've been looking for a rollable solar panel. I do have a new solar panel coming to go on the back of my tonneau cover if it shows up in time. So anyway, all right. Final segment of this week is the Creator Spotlight. And this is a good one. This is a new guy that I just came across. And that's kind of what I like to share with you guys is what I do is I go back through my history on YouTube for the last week and I see what have I been interested in. And this was the new channel I came across just the other day. And it's Craigslist Hunter. He's got 409,000 subscribers. And he runs, it's like a pawn shop, but it's just a buy and sell shop. He doesn't keep things on loan. He just buys them. And if people want to come back and buy them, well, they're on the shelf. And he deals with a lot of scammers. And some of the stuff is unbelievable. And some of the older people that are trying to run scams on him. He had a lady come in. She's like, here's a brand new Milwaukee chop saw. And he's like, I don't think so. And he opened it up and it was stuffed full of folded newspapers. I don't know how she even thought she was going to get away with it. And then she's like, oh, but I have some gift cards to sell you. And the gift cards were empty. And she tried to say they were worth $100. The lady was an absolute scammer. But if you want to watch and see what some of the ne'er-do-wells like to do to try to scam folks, give that a go. Because, I like this channel. And his is Craigslist Hunter on YouTube. I've enjoyed him so far. He's got kind of a French accent. He has a camera going 24/7. Anybody who goes into the shop knows that he's recording. And yeah, definitely a cool thing. Rachel Brown says cornstarch, flour, or dried yarrow for anticoagulant. Yarrow can also help with pain. Very good to know. So that brings us pretty much to the conclusion of this week's show. This was a great, man, we flew through an hour and 45 minutes. I'm telling you, it's getting to the point where this show might end up having to be split into 2 shows eventually. There'll be a few changes when I get back from my 8-week road trip. Nothing for the worse, but just kind of doubling down on some content things. As you guys know, on the road, it's impossible, nearly impossible, to keep up a consistent content schedule. I do my best, and I'm going to really try to do Thursday and Sunday every week anyway. But we'll see where we end up with the traveling. I'm really looking forward to it, but I've got some really good ideas for when I get back. And that's another reason why I'm not taking a road trip in the fall, because it takes a few months to start building momentum on the YouTube channel, and you have to do things kind of specifically every day for months on end to really start seeing results. And then when you travel and you get out of that routine, then you have to kind of start from zero. Not zero, but you know how it is. So anyway, when I get back. But next weekend, I cannot believe I can say next weekend already, I'm going to be speaking at the Kentucky Sustainable Living Festival. There's still tickets available. You can go to Kentucky Sustainable Living Festival.com, I believe. There's tickets available. There's also spots available for Chuck Peoples' medical class. Going to be a great class. It's the Friday before. He put together my own personal first aid kits. And beyond that, I consider him a friend and a brother in prepping for sure. So with that, folks, I appreciate you. We will figure out that echo. echo. Yeah, anyway. So anybody on the audio, thanks for this. This week in prepping we've seen a really big jump in viewership across the board. So thanks, guys. I appreciate you. I think 2 weeks ago on all platforms, we had well over or around 1,500 downloads / listens, which to me was huge. So thanks, guys. I really appreciate you. And as always, stay happy, stay healthy, and have a great week.